Alright, so here's the thing. I used to be the kind of person you'd walk past on campus and not think twice about. Average. Uninspired. Going through the motions. A 2.3 GPA. Couldn't bench my own body weight. Barely got out of bed before noon unless class started at 10:30. I had dreams, big ones, but none of them were happening anytime soon because I didn't have the drive, the discipline, or even the belief that I could actually make it happen. I tried all the usual stuff. Motivational videos, goal-setting apps, accountability partners. Hell, I even bought one of those $197 planners that promised to unlock your inner greatness. But nothing stuck. Every time I'd start strong. Monday morning hype, gym bag packed, water bottle filled. And by Thursday I'd be back on the couch eating leftover pizza and scrolling TikTok like nothing ever happened. Here's the kicker though. I wasn't lazy. I really wasn't. I wanted to change. I wanted to be successful, disciplined, fit, driven. I just couldn't become that version of me. And I kept failing. Not because I lacked effort, but because I was trying to force myself into a role I didn't believe I belonged in. It wasn't until I stumbled across a concept buried deep in James Clear's Atomic Habits that something inside me shifted. Not some flashy productivity hack or a new routine structure. No, it was something way more subtle and way more powerful. Clear talked about how our brains are prediction machines. That we don't really respond to goals as much as we respond to identity. He called it identity-based habits, and I remember reading that part and thinking, wait, what? He said that when people try to change behavior through sheer willpower, they fail because they're fighting against a deeper layer, their sense of self. So if you believe you're an undisciplined person, then every attempt at discipline feels like a battle. But if you can shift your identity, if you can believe you're someone who gets things done, who follows through, who takes action, that same habit becomes effortless. That idea hit me like a ton of bricks. It reminded me of something else I'd read earlier, about cognitive biases, specifically confirmation bias, which is basically your brain's tendency to look for information that confirms what it already believes. If you think you're stupid, you'll notice every time you mess up. If you think you're lucky, you'll remember every time things worked out in your favor. But here's where it gets really interesting. Neuroscientists call this exact same phenomenon predictive coding. Your brain doesn't wait around for reality to unfold. It predicts it based on past experiences, and then filters incoming data to match those predictions. So if you believe you're a failure, your brain will literally ignore evidence that says otherwise. But if you can somehow flip that switch, if you can convince your brain that you're already the person you want to become, then suddenly it starts scanning for proof of that instead. That's when the light bulb went off. This wasn't just theory. This was a tool, a mechanism, a loophole in the way the human brain operates. So I decided to test it. I stopped trying to motivate myself. I stopped setting big goals and pushing harder. Instead, I started playing a game with my subconscious. I started feeding it little pieces of evidence, tiny believable moments that would slowly reshape its operating system. I called them identity anchors. Here's how it worked. If I wanted to become a disciplined person, I needed to find actions that proved I already was one, even if only slightly. So instead of saying, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and crush my workout, which my brain would immediately reject as fake news, I said, I'm someone who makes their bed every morning. Every single morning. Even if I crawled right back into it after. Even if I messed it up once or twice. I made it non-negotiable. And every time I did it, I told myself, see? I'm the type of person who follows through. Same with studying. Instead of telling myself I needed to study for 3 hours straight, I'd say, "Successful students go to the library." So I showed up. Even if I only stayed for 20 minutes. Even if I stared at my phone the whole time. I showed up. And each time I did, I added another data point to the internal file labeled "Me as a successful student." First it felt silly. Like I was lying to myself. But over time something strange started happening. My brain began pattern matching. It started connecting dots that weren't there before. I remembered times I finished a video game all the way through. I realized I never missed an episode of my favorite show. I noticed that I always followed through on things I genuinely cared about. Wait a second. So maybe I'm not undisciplined. Maybe I'm just misaligned. That realization changed everything. I started curating my environment to support my new identity. I unsubscribed from accounts that focused on struggle, failure, and mediocrity. I stopped watching content where people whined about how hard life was. Instead, I immersed myself in material created by people who had the identities I wanted. People who talked like leaders, moved like athletes, wrote like writers. I listened to podcasts where successful entrepreneurs shared their routines. I read books written by people who had transformed themselves. I watched vlogs of people who lived disciplined lives, not to compare myself, but to remind my brain that these people weren't aliens. They were humans, just like me. And if they could do it, so could I. Each time I took action, no matter how small, I reinforced the narrative. Each time I completed a task, I gave my brain more proof that this new identity wasn't a fantasy. It was fact. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the resistance faded. Going to the gym stopped feeling like a chore. Making my bed became automatic. Showing up early to class felt normal. I didn't need motivation anymore because I wasn't doing it to prove anything to anyone else. I was simply living in alignment with who I believed myself to be. 2 years later, I graduated with a 3.8 GPA. I could deadlift over twice my body weight. I had built a consistent meditation practice. I wrote daily. I surrounded myself with high-quality people. None of this came from brute force. None of it came from white-knuckling my way through misery. It came from rewiring my brain's default settings. I didn't become a different person. I simply convinced my brain that the version of me I wanted to be was already real. And once your brain believes something is true, it starts shaping reality to match. Because here's the truth most people miss. Your brain doesn't distinguish between vivid imagination and actual experience. When you imagine yourself as a successful person, when you act like one, talk like one, move like one, your brain treats it like training data. It updates its model of who you are. And then it starts running programs that align with that updated self-image. Traditional self-help fails for so many people because it focuses on tactics, strategies, and discipline hacks. But if your identity doesn't match the goal, your brain will sabotage you every time. Willpower alone can't override years of conditioning. But identity can. So if you're struggling with consistency, motivation, or confidence, I want you to ask yourself this. Who are you trying to become? And more importantly, are you giving your brain enough proof that you already are? Because when you stop chasing results and start cultivating identity, the results come naturally. Not because you forced them, but because your brain finally sees them as inevitable. So here's your challenge. Pick one identity. Just one. Something you want to embody, whether it's someone who finishes what they start, a healthy person, a confident speaker, or a creative writer. Then create one tiny believable action that proves that identity every single day. Make your bed. Drink a glass of water first thing. Write 1 sentence. Do 5 push-ups. Send 1 email. Show up 5 minutes early. Do it not because you feel like it, but because that's what the person you want to become would do. And keep doing it until your brain has no choice but to update its files. Because once it does, everything changes. You stop trying to become successful. You just start.